So it's often a balance between that number 1 setting and the number 3 setting, the preview, that you're striving to do to make sure you get the right combination. You can see where, for example, that top plane, that front plane, really isn't where it needs to be in terms of the manubrium and the posterior limit of the first rib. So I'm going to right mouse edge and grab just, if I can, just that front edge and position it more accurately with my side view. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'll come up into this perspective window, select that posterior edge, and that actually is pretty good shape. Maybe move it down just a little bit. Now if we get down to the bottom, about at the same predicament, click that front edge, move it back a little bit, and you can see the posterior edge really needs to come back. Okay. Now my edge here in the middle could, so we're going to kind of, I think I'm going to raise that up a little bit. Again, get a little more of that angle. So what I'm struggling with is I need another edge. I really can't continue to do this without having more options. So same procedure we did before. I can right mouse and say object, pick the object, and I'll go under the mesh tool and say insert edge loop, click, and it will put an edge loop around the entire structure. I'm just going to go just about towards the middle. Okay, and I can use that then to help me begin to pull other areas. So if I say vertex and I drag a box, what I have now is not only the vertex on this side but also on the opposite side. It's the same thing as if I grabbed that edge and moved it down. So that lets me get a little more of that curve. And I'll use this vertex. Now I drag, so I'm going infinitely basically in space. In this case, I'm going infinitely into the x-axis, and now you can see I have both vertices. So what I can do then is move that and a little more carefully kind of begin to match that curve of that rib. So we just need to make a decision. I'm going to be the bottom edge of the rib. Okay, and again, you want to make sure you drag so you get on both sides. Now that's one of the advantages of having several windows open. You can see in both the top and the front how I now have points. I'm going to turn my shading to X right here so you can see better from the top. Okay, now if I hit 3, notice we're starting to get a little closer to our rib shape. Okay, go back to 1. Now the 3, what it's doing, what the preview is doing, is basically dividing everything in half. And that's why it's getting small, seemingly getting smaller. It's like taking every face and subdividing it in half and saying, okay, make a curve by going from one edge to the other halfway. And that's that big change that happens. That's why you get that seemingly remarkable size difference. So if we add more edges, meaning we have a smaller distance, the change will be less remarkable. So we're going to try to balance between adding too many edges, and then it becomes quite difficult to manage, versus having too few edges where we can't really get an accurate frame. And you can see right here, I don't have anything I can move to manipulate. So let's take that insert edge loop tool again and drag it here. And let's get to, let's say, maybe the bottom there. It's just kind of going in the middle between the top and the bottom. Again, get the vertex. Whoops, sorry. Right mouse vertex, drag a little box. Make sure I had, gosh darn it. What's happening is this tool, this insert tool is still on, so I'm going to click the arrow, vertex. Now I can get them separately. Okay, so this time we'll use the bottom of the third rib, and where we seem to really need to get more changes here. So I'll put those things there. Okay, and if we look at our, really not too bad. Matter of fact, I can hide that all cube layer, turn off the X-ray here, select, so I just clicked in the window so that now I have a perspective as my active window, and I'm going to hit the space bar, and that lets me look at, and that's not too bad. Now the one thing you notice is kind of square, you know what I mean? It's the rib cage isn't straight along its lateral margins, it has to curve more, and we know from our image that maybe some of that has to do with the width, but most of it is just the fact that these edges here aren't quite positioned correctly. So before we do anything with them, let's look at some of these. Now I'm going to model a little bit with the number 3 or preview. So again, it's a balance which one I use, but most of the times I really want to be careful that you go back and forth, because you can make changes here in this preview mode and not realize that you're really creating quite a problem. And like I said, often it's a compromise which one you're going to buy into. Okay, so now I've got my, still need a little more depth here. And I've kind of run into the same problem I did up top. I just need another edge to get this bottom to fill in. I can use my face, grab that, pull it up a little bit. So I'm using the faces here now. I'm manipulating faces to get a little closer. And you see I'm not doing too bad from the side. Still need to come posterior to get to that edge. I'm doing okay there. Maybe a little bit more posterior here. And maybe this could come up just a little bit. Okay, so we're pretty close now. I think really the real struggle, or the thing that needs to be done the most, is how do I get rid of this flatness here? How do I, let's see what happens if we take these front planes and scale them a little narrower. See how that starts to pull this rounder? So I'm clicking on the 3 front planes, holding the shift key so I can add. And then I could probably do the same thing on the posterior 3 planes. So one of the goals is to try to use as few faces as possible to get the shape. And you notice now I've kind of got a better rib thing, and maybe because you can see I'm a little, now on my anterior view I'm not quite the full width, but that's good for me. I think that's a positive, because I think what I can do is grab this edge, the one I wanted to use, to make this a little wider. See, now I even exaggerate, or really not really exaggerate, but actually represent a little more accurately the fact that the human rib cage is wider versus anterior posterior axis. It's medial to lateral wider. Dogs, horses, all four-legged animals, the opposite. Their anterior to posterior dimension is much deeper than the width. So now we're pretty close here. Still need a little more work down here at the bottom. So let's take the face, pull it down a little bit. Maybe that we can scale out a little more. Maybe we can take also take this edge and make things a little better there. Okay, so let's save that. We'll call this ribCageCube 4. And we'll come back